We know that species that are capable of coming up with new solutions to a problem that they could never have been programmed for, these are the ones that really survive. So there's an element in evolution which favors the creative.
So creativity is definitely important. All the efforts to stifle it, suffocate it, and completely dismiss or disregard it, it's the wrong approach. Creativity needs to be appreciated, because not everybody can actually do it, or rather let it happen. You can't do creativity. It happens to you, because it's basically something being downloaded into your consciousness, and you are just the receiver. So, how good are you at receiving? I think that's the main thing about being creative.
Are capable of altering the way in which we put things together in our mind. To allow to come into being a truly new gestalt. That's the nearest I can get. So it's a very hard thing to describe, but it's slightly like many of the most important things in life, that it's easy to recognize, but it's not so easy to circumscribe in language. Yeah, and everything about the process points to the fact that you can't make it happen on demand. Up to a point, I can certainly say things to avoid doing, but you can't just say, if you do this, something creative will follow. It doesn't happen like that. That we need to be painting ourselves out of the picture, not into the picture. The trouble is that we foreground our minds, our activity, when we try to be creative. And when we try to be creative, or even try not to try to be creative, because we've discovered that's not right, either of these situations involves too much conscious effort. And it's just exactly that we need to get out of the picture. It's well known that people need to be relaxed. They need to have no time pressures if they're going to be creative. That does mean that sometimes they won't come up with anything. I admit that. But there isn't a way of avoiding that. If you try to fence the process round in such a way that it will always produce something that you call creative, it will never produce anything truly original or interesting. It will only produce marginal variations. So, yeah, it's an interesting and problematic area, if you like, but only problematic if you believe the world conforms to the way the left hemisphere says it works, if you know perfectly well that it doesn't.
So again, this brings back the window of tolerance. This is a state of flow, of being relaxed, not stressed. And I think that with this, you can be more in a state of flow.
Present, if there is to be creativity. The one that I talk about least and will only mention in passing here is intrinsic personality and the character of one's cognition. So there are individuals who are just well set up for this. They need to be able to combine things that are not in themselves rare, but in combination are relatively rare. So there is a certain level of intelligence that must be achieved. There needs to be the ability to draw together things that seem normally disparate, and the ability to make connections and see a new gestalt. So part of that is who you are. But it's the processes that the other things that we need. That is, there needs to be a generative faculty. That is, that allows something to come into being. It is not crowding it out with already conceived ideas. It's not attempting to clarify it too early, to have the detail too early in the process. It's not saying, I don't see how that works, let's dismiss that. Or this seems to be very ambivalent, I don't know which way it's going to go. There's two opposites here that need to be clarified. Which one? All those trying to clarify it too early is unhelpful. So what one needs is a mind that is capable of being still enough and receptive enough to allow something new to come into being, not crowding it out by attempts to make it happen or thoughts about why it's happening or why it's not happening and so on. Then I suppose there is what I would call the permissive qualities, which are really part of getting out of the way of this process. You can't, I often use the image of gardening because it's very close to my heart. There's a garden here just outside my window. And a gardener cannot make a plant, for sure. A gardener can't even make a plant grow. The plant makes itself grow. But what the gardener does is either create the circumstances in which that plant can thrive or fail to make it and choke or stifle the plant so that it can't grow to the best of its ability and capacity. So it's a bit like that. Most of the advice is don't do certain things. And that permissive element is very important. And those things, those are faculties that we need to have, the generative, the ability to make connections, to see new shapes, to avoid over-verbalizing, and letting the thing be and accepting it for a while until it declares itself more clearly.
So these mandalas, they sometimes sit around for weeks until some new idea comes in, or also I have no idea what colors to use, and then I just let it rest. It doesn't matter. I'm not in a rush to finish. And then suddenly I just know that color and that combination. But it's not important. It just comes in as an idea, as an image. And I am just the instrument that puts the color to the paper.